Welcome everybody to our Outvise webinar. Today we're going to talk about conversational service, right? Combining digital and human dialogues. Basically, it's about the whole set of webinars that we had during the whole year. We are talking about data from different point of views. And today we'll talk about the whole topic of digital conversations, right? For that, basically, we have our speaker, which is Jan Morgenthau. We will interview him. Hi, Jan. How are you?
Okay. So actually, since beginning of this year, I started actually to head up a team, or it's actually a multiple teams, which are all about conversational experience towards our customers. So in terms of every channel, every touch point where actually Deutsche Telekom can have conversations, so which including our speech portal, so the hotline when you're calling, which including our live chat, which including our chatbot activities, which also including everything about messaging channels like WhatsApp, for example, but also SMS. I'm from a telco company. And of course, also everywhere else where you can actually have conversations. And it's actually the first time in the history of the company that we brought everything together. And what I just mentioned up to now were all the assisted channels. But obviously, and that's actually mainly where I'm also coming from with the background, is in the non-assisted channel, so from the bot and bot activities. So I mentioned already chatbot, but we also go now live with a call bot, and we're already live also with a speaker bot, so with a voice bot on a smart speaker. And that's in total is at the moment which I'm ramping up and bring it all together, all the bits and pieces from Deutsche Telekom. And as already mentioned beforehand, 5 years I already worked on the automatization part of it. Beforehand in a consultancy, mainly also in the telco area, with a background actually in computing and business.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. Yeah. And then we'll have as an invitee, Mercedes Rodriguez. Mercedes, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, Pau. Well, I'm chatbot and voice assistance developer. I've been working in this sector around 3 years and have done several products that are already in production, some of them for Spanish universities. And I'm Google Developer Expert for Assistant as well. Right now I'm freelance and I just do consulting, training, and also development services, for the companies.
Cool, thank you, Mercedes. So, well, I mean, today the format is going to be a bit different. We would like to not to do a whole presentation, but to have a very interactive format, right? Where we all post questions to Jan, and based on that, we all learn about what he's doing, what are his thoughts, etc. Right? But in a very interactive format. So I would ask all of you to use the chat and to basically pose your questions, and then we will read it and we will ask them to Jan. So be prepared, Jan. A few slides about Outvise, right? As always, we are a platform for freelancers, for top experts, right? Global, so basically based in Europe, in Africa and Middle East. Very fast response, 48 hours, and a quite innovative approach from the whole digital interface. So where you can directly serve and find the right talent, right? And as always, we said we have like a double side. We're obsessed about quality, and we use basically two methodologies, right? On one side, we use quite sophisticated algorithms to match the profiles with the people who you are looking for, and then on the other side, we have a team of scouts, which are gurus, which are people who are very specialists on a certain topic and who are able to validate that CVs and to interview that people. So basically by combining both the human side of it and the digital side of it, and that's something that maybe Jan, we can talk about that, the combination of the human and the technology.
Yep.
We think that with that we can optimize the results of the platform. As of today, we have these 26,000 experts. And yeah, as I said, 48 hours and HQ in Barcelona. So let's go fast to the topic, to the case of Jan Morgenthal and Deutsche Telekom and Conversational touch points. So what I would propose, basically, maybe before, let me just take the stop sharing. Wait a second. Stop sharing. Okay. Maybe before starting, what I would propose is that you, Jan, spend like 5 minutes explain a bit what you do. I mean, you already did that, so you did a bit of snapshots, but maybe you can explain a bit so the audience understands better, right? I just as a starting point, maybe I was in a project like I think it was like 4 years ago in a telco in Germany also, where we start with the bots. It was something quite innovative at that time, 4 or 5 years ago. I think that everything has been is much more sophisticated, right? I don't know, Jan, if you can explain us a bit what you do.
Yeah. So it was actually, I think in mid of 2015, we actually started to looking into the area of artificial intelligence, especially in terms of conversational AI. So in terms of the automated part of the conversations. And the first step, it was actually just for us, just a POC, so a proof of concept, because just many companies were coming to us and did some advertisements. So the typical pitch situation where you're just in and they're trying to show you what is actually happening, and we just took it from there, because we just feel, okay, something happened in the market, so something must have happened, something changed, because all of a sudden everyone started slowly to talk about this topic. And we just started actually a little research project to just have a look into how far is technology, because from a couple of sites actually I just heard back then, like, oh yeah, we already tried it out 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and we were just interested, okay, what has been changed and can we actually use it? And back then actually we started then with looking into the market globally, and we're just quite surprised in some circumstances in terms of what has actually happened, for example, in North America also, and especially in Asia back then already. And we're quite surprised about, on the one hand, back then, WeChat just started. So that's quite interesting. Up to everyone today talks about it as the biggest messaging platform in the world, but back then they just started. So that is actually something quite fun. So, and we just had a look into in how such a market, like especially the Far East Asia, like what they are doing with it. And that was kind of like the first glimpse for us, where we said, like, okay, we would also like to try an experiment. And we were actually trying to find a market within Deutsche Telekom who would actually support us and let us run with some customer data and real customers. Okay. And back then, actually, the Austrian guys, so our small daughter in Austria, were quite eager to do this. Yeah, we just started there because they already had a rule-based chatbot available. So I think that's what.
Sorry to interrupt you. Could that be that was a CX company, the provider from?
Yeah, exactly. Back then it was provided by CX company, and first time what we actually did was just to enrich it and extend it in terms of big data technology. Because first thing we were thinking, okay, for everything what we need for the automation side, we first need data. And the first thing we asked them, okay, do you actually have the customer logs about everything? They just told us no. Why we need it? And it's like, oh, actually, if you want to move into artificial intelligence, we need some training data. That's what is very useful. And back then, they just didn't have it because they were not aware of this fact, actually, which was also very interesting back then. And so we just started to actually enrich from the other side, so from the back-end perspective in terms of ramping up and big data lake, and started to collect the data and started to make some first-hand analysis, which was, to be honest, nothing for the direct conversation, But then later on, this was actually our boost when we then started to actually change to an AI-fueled chatbot. Because then all of a sudden we could use all this data, all this models, all this analysis we already did back then. And that was roughly 1 year later when we actually switched with a small startup from Asia to start it back then.
So, sorry to interrupt you. When you say that data lake, this means
Yep.
that the whole data that the bot was collecting.
Yeah, not only what the bot was collecting. For example, we had one of the first use cases we back then actually had, because back then T-Mobile Austria was a mobile-only company, and they already also fueled all their mobile data into the big data lake. And for example, we could also provide them back then, it was end of 2016 already, when there was a mobile outage. So when the network went down for whatever reason. I mean, it's very rare, to be honest, that is really happen in a mobile network, but it can happen. And that was one of the first use cases we actually brought live on the chatbot. And there actually, I felt the first time, okay, here is some golden nuggets where actually we can really start, because either way, either we have the right data and we can actually provide really here something for good for the customer, or, and that's actually the other part of it, is what is actually the customer doing if they talk to one of our service representatives or to a bot. They are actually telling us a story. They are actually telling us, oh, there's an outage, or I actually want a new contract, etc. So they are actually telling us what they want. And that's actually the interesting part. And you also need to make it, and you need to get this data and make it in real-time intelligence. And there was actually something where, for me, it was an eye-opener in 2016, and where I luckily then actually could ramp up the team quite dramatically. And we started working on a little bit broader and tried out different vendors, different stacks, and yeah, ended up in the later then the story that I actually took up the full business now, beginning of this year, and not only hitting anymore only the technical part of it, but now also steering now the conversational touch points, because we just said, look, it actually makes only sense to go ahead with the automatization of it if we actually look into from both sides, because technology will always have got the limitation. So there will be always use cases where either we as a company say we do not want to automate and we still want the prefer the human touch in there, or other way around, it's just too complex, or we don't have the real-time data, etc. So there are other downtimes by technology or limitations which are still there, definitely there, where we just see it. And there actually the blended concepts are how actually the interplay of artificial and human intelligence actually take place. And that's pretty much which is now being on my flag,
Okay.
which I'm bringing now into Deutsche Telekom alive.
Okay, very interesting. And then you say at some point that that you moved to a Chinese vendor, right? So you move away from these more rule-based bots that exist in I think there were several. Well, I mean they all claim that they have artificial intelligence.
Yeah. I mean, definitely they also have. I mean, I don't want to put them down. They definitely also have by today, or even I think a few years ago, machine learning. But back then, actually, we choose on purpose actually a small startup from Singapore. It was actually from Singapore. I mean, they also had, I think, a smaller office in Los Angeles. And back then, we directly, through our investment arm, we directly also invested in them. So that kind of like we are also breeding them. So that was actually the start. And by today, we actually have now 3 different stacks in place in Deutsche Telekom as a group. Which is one big American vendor. You can call it Big Blue if you want to, which we are using as just as a platform, because the platform itself as single AI services is quite interesting for us, because it's very modular and we can do quite a lot with it, and it can just integrate into different processes, into different tools which we already have, or applications which we already have. So that's actually the interesting part of it. Then we still actually have the Asian company in place, but we also work now with the open source startup together, which is actually from Germany. And I wouldn't go that far, but I would say that could be the future, or at least it's very interesting for us to look into them.
Okay. Because well, first, just one question. When you say we, this means Deutsche Telekom Germany, right? Or means
yeah. So So in my former role, end of last year, I actually was in a group role. So I was responsible for actually the European footprint within Deutsche Telekom, but to be honest, we only were active in 3 of our NatCos, or OpCos, which was actually Germany, Austria, and Netherlands. And since beginning of this year, actually, so my role right now is only for the German market.
Okay, good. So one question: when you go now, or at least when I've seen the latest typical graph from Gartner, right, where you see the degree of the technologies, and there is like bump in where there's a hype phase at the very beginning. Where do you think are all these technologies now? It's something that starts to consolidate, and you think that the companies can start to bet for a certain technology, or it's not even easy to choose a technology, or is it still in a very moving moment where it's very difficult to find the path of the system stack, right?
It is actually, I think, how it's always with technology, especially when you talk about artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is just a summary for a lot of different technology. But let's maybe concentrate a little bit more on, let's say, conversational AI, and let's grab out a few technology pieces which are just under it. So on the one hand, which at least for verbal language, when it's getting in, you have something like automatic speech recognition. I mean, this is actually something which I would call as a commodity technology by today, because you have it in each of your phones, you have it in a smart speaker. I mean, it's almost everywhere alone. So if you just take this technology as standalone, this is kind of like already a commodity, because I mean, even the iPhone in 2007, they already had it. So I mean, yeah, it of course it advanced in the last 13 years or 14 years, that's for sure. But it's something by today you can find like out of a cloud, you can just plug it. I mean, everyone, Amazon, Microsoft, every one of them just have it as a pure service. Same as something for if you go the other way around, if you just want to take the text and make it to speech. So the TTS of the text to speech, it's pretty much the same. That's definitely more complicated for some reason, which I find still interesting. But that's for me also commodity as a standalone technology. More interesting it will be then actually if you put something like natural language understanding and under it. If you take management under it, then comes knowledge management, and so on. There you can already see, there's a lot of different technologies, which each of them are called AI, but the trick is actually how you bring this together. And that is still something which is, I would say, that's actually really the hard bit on it, because you need to combine these different technologies, and especially, and that's most of the cases, if you order something like this out of the cloud, you usually get like a baby algorithm, which is per se quite good, but it doesn't know your data. It doesn't know maybe your consumer product names. It doesn't know your processes, and so on. And there, actually, the real hard work starts, where you also still need human power, where still AI doesn't help you.
Okay. In the back of the system, in the NLU, and in the knowledge management, these are the toughest part. Huh?
Yeah, I would call actually that's quite a tough part. I mean, there are technologies like natural language generation, which is available. I mean, I also see, especially again Asia, China, there, like Alibaba, etc., which are quite intensively working on those technologies. I mean, American companies as well. But in terms of is it just out of the box really working, just with a few logs or with a few data? Definitely not. I mean, you still need quite a lot of human thinking about how you want to use it, how you want to train it, how you validate it, how you take the risk out of it. I mean, just as an example, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, Microsoft opened up their chatbot Tai on Twitter. And it actually ended up that I think after 2 days they needed to shut down because just the people were just feeding it with, I don't know, like some racism and homophobia and stuff like this. And it was just repeating it. because no one told them where the limitation of the system.
Yeah, it become a hater bot, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that is something you need to think about. So actually, you need to think about the concepts you put behind there, and that's actually something where, yeah, a good data scientist is definitely very, very helpful.
Okay, and look, we have some questions.
Oh yeah.
Okay. What was the technical reason for choosing a Big Blue or the open source vendor?
Yeah. So actually, I think we did the last 5 years. I think we did 3 or 4. Let's say 3.5 RFX. So RFX is for us like the process where we just go on the market and just ask for quotes of different companies, and where we of course also then actually look into the technology, and usually then a handful of companies we run a POC with them over 3 to 4 months to just have a look into. And back in the time, actually, when we choose Big Blue, to be honest, the first time we did it, we actually kicked them out quite early because their German skill was very poor back then. And I think 1.5 years later, they all of a sudden came back again and said like, oh, look, actually German language is now next to Japanese and English, one of our 3 super languages, which are now super well trained, and you can do quite a lot of stuff with it. And they just showed us the results. We were quite impressed back then. And Microsoft is still ramping up their stuff. Amazon was still not really existing in that way. And there we just decided, okay, we would like to go with them. And since then, of course, I mean, we invested quite heavily. That's why we still keep on the stack. And what I can say on the basic concepts behind the AI services, I mean, that's very much my personal opinion. It really doesn't matter if you go with IBM, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, etc. Some are doing this bit a little bit better, some do this byte a little bit better, but in the end, they're all based on the same machine learning concepts, which actually have been written already in the 1950s, 60s, so in the last century. So it's sometimes it's only a little bit twist and tweaks, and they are 2% better in the recognition. So. And 2%, to be honest, in terms of customer experience, the customer wouldn't notice if the recognition is at 85 or 87%. That's not the break dealer here.
Right. That's a good point. And there's there's a $1 million question here. What is the economic benefit for German Telekom achieved by using bots?
Yeah. So. What we just, I mean, there is also actually just a recent study from Gartner, which is just saying like a pure human-based contact is 80 to 100 times more expensive than a fully digitized contact. Okay. So that's quite a huge number, right? And I can definitely imagine when I look into how much one conversation costs us, fully automated, of course, versus like a little bit longer a call cost us in the way, then I would actually say like, yeah, that quite makes sense. So it's definitely about from a company perspective about cost reduction. But what I would also see is, and that's actually why conversational service is so interesting, is I think for the last 15 years, many companies try to move into self-services, pure self-services like web, app, etc. And it's just like when humans are not, or they are, let's put it a different way around, humans are actually used to talk, to have conversation, to have a dialogue, and to feel empathy for the one they're talking with. And I just look at today like some online customer accounts or online apps, and do you feel empathic when you use it, or empathy for it? That's of course missing. That's not there. So it's very unnatural behavior. And we just see it's very costly for us to bring actually, or to steer our customers into the self-services. I mean, still we invest in it and we do it because they are still fully automated and of course way cheaper for us, but the cost we need to steer the customer from the call center into there is quite high. And there actually, again, conversational service with, for example, a call bot kicks in, because it can also move into a part digitization, or at least or full or part digitization, and this is already like a huge step towards the right way.
And that means that that whenever you want to talk with Telecom or whoever, you have to force the entry throughout the digital interface, and then you move to the human, or you let the people choose what channel they want to use?
Yeah. So there we actually have got a quite strict philosophy at Deutsche Telekom. So first of all, it's completely down to the customer. So our customers can choose what they want to. So if they want to talk to a human, they can talk to a human. So we don't block them at all. Definitely, but still what we would like to do, and that is actually something we already experienced, what we actually trialed out about roughly 4 years ago, is a concept which we call internally magic button, which is actually nothing else, which we are showing on each channel always to our customers. What are the other opportunities you can choose from? And we also show within there the waiting times. So for example, we know exactly, okay, if you want to wait for a chat agent, this will take you like 3 minutes. If you want to wait for a call agent, this will take you 6 minutes, etc. And then of course, we always show now, okay, but if you want to take our chatbot or callbot, this goes instantly. You don't need to wait.
Right.
And now we also try to figure out, we just had it actually in customer testing also to show, oh, you have a question about, I don't know, recover your password for your online account. This usually takes only 30 seconds in a callbot. And we just try to show this number as well and just tell them like, okay, you can wait definitely, but you would be way faster if we just put you into this channel. And that's kind of like where we try to, let's say, convince or manipulate, however you want to call it, positively our customers to go into the automated channels. But nevertheless, the vision I have is definitely that our bot or our non-assisted intelligence will be at some point the welcome manager, the concierge service. So it will be more also in a dialogue and not only showing this as a table, but more like, hey pal, welcome to Deutsche Telekom. What can I do today for you? And then you just ask, oh yeah, whatever, my bill is too high or something, like typical telco use case. And we can just say like, oh, okay, great. Last time you just talked to our chatbot, would you like to do it again? Or something like this. So more in a more personal, empathic way, actually. That's actually my vision where I would like to go to.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Mercedes, you activated. Do you want to?
Yeah, I have a question. When a user chooses to talk to the chatbot, but at some point of the conversation maybe it's not working properly, do you have any way to change to a human agent? And in that case, when you decide, how do you decide in which point of the conversation this redirection should be done? And also, is it done in real time? And how the human agent, what information the human agent receives so they can continue with the conversation? And how do you manage that?
Yeah. So to be honest, our chatbot never went live without any default functions to go over to someone human, because there was, which many people, especially from the operations, were very worried about, which I can absolutely understand. So we have actually from the beginning on already a handover to the chat agent, because it's just like in the same kind of like window. So it's just like another application just kicks in, but the customer is staying in the same browser or on the same app, so he doesn't need to move on, or he doesn't need to change anything. We second thing, we enriched it actually, because sometimes it can happen that actually we don't have a chat agent available, or it's just there's just too much waiting time. And then actually just by some values, we just offer then our customers a callback service. So we just ask them, okay, if you like to, you can just give us now a number, and one of our representatives, our agents, whatever, will just give you a call back within the next 2 hours. That's like kind of like the SLA we put behind there, which is always like 2 hours, and that actually works quite well, and that's how we work direct to it. When do we actually define it? How to hand over? It a little bit depends on. We have some dialogues where we put it just as pure business logic, where we just say, okay, we do not want to do this business case or this, this use case within the automated way. So we really would like that you talk to a human now. Then we just suggest that to the customer that we would like to forward him right now to one of our agents. But it can also happen, of course, that if, for example, which can still happen, that the customer is trying like 3-4 times to make himself understand by the bot, and the bot is maybe has got a bad day. You never know. And then, of course, there's also like some monitoring trigger points where we also say, for example, like 3 points, same or similar keyword has been or sentence has been put into the system, and the bot has got no idea. Then there's a safety net kicks in, and it will also tell the customer, okay, let's go to the human. We don't go ahead here anymore. So there are various ways how you can actually connect it.
Cool. I have another question here. Well, it's a bit technical. How long typically takes NLG for planning, teaching, and performing the machine learning part of a basic bot? NLG is natural language. What's NLG?
It's natural language generation.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a little bit depends on how you define a basic bot. I mean, if it just has got, let's say, like 20 to 30 intents, so, and maybe a couple of dialogue flows, then I would pretty much say to just put up the system and the first 10 dialogue trees. I mean, this would take you maybe like 1 or 2 sprints, so 2-week cycles. But then the training kicks in, and I would say this takes you definitely like another month or 2 months, and then I would say after 3 months you have a basic bot, which is let's say for the circumstances you put it up is quite well working.
We have a question from Mexico from Pedro Martinez. What is your recommendation in making it clear to the users that they are interacting with a bot and not with a real person?
No, okay, yeah. That's actually also something we actually put down also with our guidelines, that we do not want to hide that this is actually a bot. So it's very clear for us. So for example, for us, the bot has got actually a name which is called Ask Magenta. So Magenta is our lovely company color, and so it's very, very clear for the customer that this is a bot, and it is, and also directly the first sentence when you kick in, depending on the daytime, it says here like, "Good morning, I'm the digital assistant called Frag Magenta of Deutsche Telekom, and I can help you with blah 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 blah." And as soon as the human kicks in, for example, like a chat agent, then actually he will introduce himself like, "Hey, my name is Christian, and I just saw like, oh yeah, you just had a chat with our little bot fellow, and I will pick up here from the conversation where you just stopped with him."
Mm-hmm. That's good. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I think there are some clips in YouTube, right, where there's a robot calling, and it's difficult to realize that.
Yeah. I mean, technology companies work on it to actually have it human parity, which is on the one hand great, but I would always say tell the customer that is now a bot you're talking to, because otherwise it just brings you really in terms of customer experience, at some point you will just get smashed. I'm pretty sure about it.
Okay, another question is, what is the biggest and most typical misconception you have encountered in your conversational chatbot projects?
I think actually there are a few. I mean, for me, one thing is actually, which I think also in the first couple of months we were actually quite bad with, is thinking about conversational, I would call it strategies. So, for example, what is actually happening if a customer is writing or is input something which you cannot understand, and you ask 3 times the same question back, in terms of like, "Oh, I didn't understand you, can you please repeat? Oh, I didn't understand you, please can you repeat it? I didn't understand you, please can you repeat me?" I mean, that is also something which a human would not do, right? So, I mean, they would also try to explain it differently. And these are, for example, something which I always figure out on the dialogue area, which I will, when I use, let's say, bots from other companies, where I always get annoyed, like that people don't think about this, because it's also something about how you make actually people come again and reuse it, because it doesn't mean that only if you have like solved maybe the problem, so you maybe recovered the password again, it doesn't mean that the next time they're really coming. So somehow you also need to delight the customer that it's really an asset for them, and they would also like to use it the next time. So that is actually something which I see most of the times when someone is starting in a new project. And we have a lot of, for example, internal customers from communication, from HR, etc., which do not think about this. And they just come to us and just tell us like, oh yeah, our recruiting website is not that good. We want a bot. Okay, for what reason? If just your website is bad, then a bot is not the ultimate answer to it. There should be actually something else. What actually you want to achieve with it, and that is always something which I say, like, okay, actually you need to put the conversation, the relationship management you can actually do through a bot. That actually you need to put in the middle of your concept. That's now only the dialogue part. In the data part, there are much more pitfalls actually you can run down.
Good. More questions. Wait 1 second. There's another one here. Yeah, it says, what parameters do you use to decide which journeys you want to automate?
Okay. That's actually, so at the moment, let's put it this way, we actually started very simple. We just did analysis on the already existing use cases, for example, on the hotline, and just figured out, okay, just by pure volume, we just decided, okay, that are the first use cases we just want to go to. I mean, right now, our application, which we have on the market, has got roughly 700 intents included, and a little bit more dialogues already available. So that's quite a huge application by now. So it's getting a little bit more tough. Let's put it this way. So now actually we really need to look into the value streams, how we would call it. So really create the value in terms of like, okay, what is actually the best use case which we go next? Because it's not only more about, is it now actually a troubleshooting, or is it billing or something like this, because this is all included. It's now really down the path and more about like, is it like this little billing feature or this little troubleshooting feature? And there basically we just use a value stream method. So we actually use SAFe as an agile framework, and it's always about a certain format we're using there, which is always call it like everything which you can do quick and has got high impact, you do first. Everything which of course takes longer time and is not that much impact, is just going in the backlog a little bit down the road. So it's actually pretty simple, to be honest. No magic behind.
Yeah, I see. Well, there's another question here. Can you provide data on customer choosing non-human versus human? And then what percentage of customers opt out of the bot conversation to continue to talk with a human?
So I think a percentage, to be honest, I do not really have it by hand. What would I need to say? Up to now, it is actually that. So what we actually say is, especially about like something like opt-in or opt-out option. Firsthand, when at least at the moment when a customer start talking with our bot, usually they are anonymous for us. So we don't need to have any opt-in or opt-out. But when they then want to have a personalized service, then we usually use the proper single sign-on, which we just have, and there's automatically everything which actually the customer has been already agreed to, so we can just use it from there. And the customer just get also like a little hint, like, okay, we're using now the single sign-on, please put in your data, your credentials, so it's very clear actually to the customer that they now move on. And in terms of handing it over actually from a bot to the agent, we don't have any opt-in or opt-out functions available, but we actually inform the customer that we will give the information about the threat he just had with the bot, and we will hand over it or forward it to the agent. And up to now, I do not think there was any use case or any log file I could remember in that any customer said, "Oh, please don't do it. Don't forward it to the agent. I do not want to get my problem solved."
Okay. Yeah, I see. Another question, Jan. It's regarding the NPS. So well, I don't know. Maybe you don't use the NPS. So the first question would be, what API for quality you use for experience, right? If it's satisfaction or NPS.
Yep.
If that's the same that are being used for human agents, and if it can be comparable, right? Well, I know. I think there's a science behind that. There should be
absolutely. So we use an NPS definitely. For the agent, we do not use it. But what we actually do is, in parallel, we also use like a very simple star rating, and with direct feedback. So at every end of a dialogue, the customer's always been asked firsthand, does your inquiry in whatever terms has been solved? Because that's very important for us, because we as a service part of Telekom Germany, the first hand or the highest KPI we are actually having is the first solution rate. So first contact solution rate is just for us the key point which we would like to offer. But directly after this question comes always either, and this is like really 50-50, either the net promoter score on a scale from 1 to 10, how would you recommend us? And the other one is just a star rating on 1 to 5, where 5 is good and 1 is of course the worst. What also you do in the App Store, for example, and it's just 50-50. And with a star rating, we can actually also compare it with the agents. So, for example, how was the performance of the chat agents? So it's quite comparable here. And then actually what we also measure as well, which is also very important for us in terms of the quality of each flows, is that we actually have so-called we setting like what's the right word about it? We set like log points within each dialogue flow to actually figure out how great or how low is actually the customer effort score for the customer. So really see how long does it actually take the customer from the start to it has been solved or to some point in between.
Yeah. Okay, very interesting. There's another question. There's a good question here. It's asking what companies. What benchmarks do you have? What companies do provide good customer experience using chatbots, automation, etc. in your opinion? If you can share 3 or 5 some companies say, look, these guys are really good on that.
Yeah, of course, us. No. So what I can definitely say, and I was really very delighted actually to see this, is actually something, and maybe I'm also a little bit, let's say, too much into the telco business. But actually, we had a couple of times this year a great exchange with China Mobile. And what they actually do in terms of just through the WeChat platform and also in terms of automatization is very cool stuff. So there I can definitely say they're really state of the art, and they're definitely 1 or 2 years in front of us. So there we could definitely learn a lot from them. But I was also quite proud that 1 or 2 features they didn't have, and they were quite interested in terms of that we actually had it. So that was actually a very nice exchange. But I can definitely say, they are really far down the road. So that was really great to see this. In principle, what I actually like, and that's maybe not only the bot, but about the approach of, let's say, conversational service or messaging service to the customers, is actually what Swisscom is doing in Switzerland. Okay. They're investing quite a lot in various messaging channels and also do the automation behind, and I think they do a really good job there. And I can just recommend to have a look into. Usually, I think the services are in Swiss, German, English, Italian, and French. So it's quite. You can actually, I think all of you can actually check it out. So, and it's actually really nice. So this I can definitely recommend. That's definitely the 2 from the telcos I would recommend because I quite like them. What I saw there, or what I learned also from them. In terms of other companies, I've got always a feeling most companies are not that advanced up to now. So what I see is that many companies invest especially on chatbots on Facebook messaging platform. So, for example, at least I saw a very good use case with Deutsche Lufthansa, for example. They had it for rebooking your flights. So there was only really one key use case they had live with a chatbot on the Facebook Messenger platform, which was actually quite a really good use case. So when your flight was cancelled or delayed or whatever, you could actually go to the chatbot and ask for alternatives. And that you could really do based on also on your data. And that was actually something which just by this one use case, I mean, and the chatbot still up to today, it can only do this one use case. But I think that's actually a really quite good case. And I think that is always something which I would also recommend to every company. Just think about what is actually where you can actually use bots very well. And sometimes it's a little bit outside of the box thinking. And yeah, good.
Good. Right. Is there any special channel that you think is the well? It's 47. It's quite late. I mean, that's the last question because we said to keep it to 45 minutes, and I mean the topic is really interesting. I mean, I would keep asking questions. What do you? Is there any channel that is more important than the rest, or I don't know what is?
Very, very difficult. I mean, it really depends on how you look onto it. I mean, in terms of from a business perspective, for us, let's say as Deutsche Telekom, obviously, the call center, the call is very important because that's still the main contact point of our customers. Right. So they like to talk to us on the call. From customer perspective, that's actually not the preferred channel. They actually prefer channels like, for example, WhatsApp, or Apple Business Chat. So they actually like to have something which anyhow they already has got as an app on their smartphone or any other device, and they do not need to download an app. They do not need to use Google, find your website, go there, and so on. So that's actually so everything which is very smooth and very seamless for them. That's actually what they prefer, and that's what I would say. I actually bring it with conversational service just together, so I can actually bring both needs together.
Okay, I understand. Mercedes, you wanted to say something?
No, just ask a question about the platforms. In which platforms are you already integrated right now? And I would like to know if you have different conversational flows for each platform, since each social media and things like that have offer different rich responses and all that. And also big companies sometimes want to have different marketing strategies for different channels. So how do you manage that?
So let's start with the latter point. Yes. So first of all, we actually have got two different mandates on our platform, which is on the one hand the B2C business and the B2B business, and secondly we actually have got difference in the dialogue flows depending on the channels or the touch points, which is actually including, because as you just mentioned, something which is like our own chat channel, I mean, we can decide on how we play it. We can decide on if we want to put some billboards or whatever in there and do something. But if you move already to WhatsApp or to Apple Business Chat, they are already quite different in what they actually offer, even though both are messaging channels. Same thing goes then to smart speaker or to our hotline. I mean, there, if you cannot just say like, oh, please have a look at this little pictures or video or whatever, because then you will feel like, oh, okay, great, you're actually on the phone. How can you have a look at it? So you need to rethink about the dialogues and how you can actually bring this information to the customer. So actually here we have got really variations of the dialogue flows, even though the intent recognition is of course always the same. But this is definitely which is there, and up to now we are actually live within our own touch points, which are like the web, our app, and the live chat. Then what we also live is actually our own smart speaker. So Deutsche Telekom has got their own smart speaker. We also have an Alexa skill, which is live. We actually now live on WhatsApp, which we're using. We will go live within this year in Apple Business Chat. And yeah, oh, and of course we are in the call center. Yeah, in our hotline.
Center, yeah. Okay. Look, Jan, I mean, it's 51, so it's we said 45 minutes, and we've done 5 minutes more. So I would like to thank you for the effort of coming, of participating, of answering the question of all our audience. So thank you very much. I don't know, and
Yeah.
hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Power, and the team.